So right now, February 18th, 2026, Russia and China and Iran are launching joint naval drills smack in the middle of the Straits of Hormuz region, where Iran just shut down that region a few days ago. The single most critical choke point on the planet is the Strait of Hormuz for energy. It carries 20% of the world's daily oil supply. These Maritime Security Belt 2026 exercises feature warships, coordinating maneuvers, live fire drills, search and rescue ops, and counter threat training, all while U.S. carriers sit just over the horizon and while nuclear talks in Geneva are hanging by a thread. We've got President Trump saying that sustained strikes are on the table. Khamenei, the Ayatollah of Iran, is vowing to sink American ships again. Yeah, when we thought one threat wasn't enough, why not just threaten to sink them again? So stay around to the end of the video because we'll do a hypothetical scenario on what could go down now that Russia and China are even more involved in the Straits of Hormuz. So here's some breaking news taking place right now with Iran. Crackdown in Iran, surge in arrests of journalists covering the protests. At least 7 journalists have been thrown behind bars in Iran since the start of the latest wave of protests in December of 2025. And then there's reports saying that progress is being made in nuclear talks with Iran, but then there's countering stories saying that JD Vance is saying that there's some stalled talks and that the talks aren't getting to what exactly is needed for an actual agreement to take place. Vice President Vance said Iran failed to address U.S. red lines during nuclear talks in Geneva this week. President Donald Trump reserves the right to use military force if negotiations fail. Sources told Axios that a U.S. military campaign against Iran would look more like a full-fledged war than limited strikes, kind of like what we've covered in the previous videos talking about sustained operations, and with multi-carriers in the region, this is a real option. And then even more satellite imagery is coming in showing that Iran is repairing and they're fortifying a lot of the sites that were struck during the 12-day war amidst the U.S. tensions. Satellite images show that Iran has recently built a concrete shield over a new facility at a sensitive military site and then covered it in soil. Interesting. I wonder if that's just the Ayatollah's vacation bunker. It's just where he goes, he brings his girlfriend with him so they can have a romantic night away from the wife. But let's get straight to what's actually going on with these maritime drills with Russia and China. The Maritime Security Belt exercises are an annual series, and Iran has hosted them since 2019. So it's kind of a happy accident that these are happening right now during the nuclear talks. So 2026, this version, it brings in Russia and China for the full trilateral show during a time when nuclear talks and talks of other things in Iran are on the table, which Iran is stiff-arming. They're giving it the full Heisman treatment. They're stiff-arming any talk of the crackdown on their own people and murdering roughly 30,000 of their own people. They're also stiff-arming any talks of the proxies. But these drills are running in the Straits of Hormuz, the Gulf of Oman, and the northern Indian Ocean, launching out of Iran's Bandar Abbas naval base. The focus areas include coordinated fleet movements, damage control, search and rescue, and practicing responses to maritime security threats. And they say it's threats like piracy and terrorism. So I guess everything's relative, right? They're saying the U.S. carriers that are there are terrorism actions. So again, I guess putting yourselves in their shoes, that's what they've been told. That's what the IRGC has been told. They've been told that their boss is a god. So all of you out there that think your boss is a jerk, at least they haven't gaslit you to the level where they've told you that he or she is a god. Or maybe they have. And in that case, I think it's time to find a new line of work. But these exercises have built momentum. On February 18th, this comes right after Iran's own IRGC live fire drills just prior to these exercises kicking off. And those live fire exercises temporarily closed sections of the Straits of Hormuz. And that is classic signaling, basically trying to show the US, hey, we can close all this down and own this entire place. That's classic signaling, while indirect nuclear negotiations in Geneva are reporting progress on guiding principles as reported by the president of Iran. But it looks like some deadlock remains on enrichment, on the missiles. The ballistic missiles are a big part of that, and on the proxies capabilities as well. So now let's look at what Iran brings to the table along with Russia and China. So Iran is the home team in those exercises. They have vessels like the Al-Vand that has C-802 anti-ship missiles, which are said to be effective to about 75 nautical miles. They've got fast attack craft that are loaded with torpedoes for close-in strikes. And the corvette Shahid carries Nor missiles as well. IRGC Navy adds a dozen small high-speed boats ideal for swarm tactics. And not just boats, but drones. Russia, China, and Iran are basically the axis of evil when it comes to drones. And drones have never been more relevant, as you've probably noticed if you've followed my channel for a while and you've just been outside and seen drones flying all around. But let's talk about the good guys when it comes to drones, and that is SDI, Sonoran Desert Institute. They've helped me see that firearms and drones aren't just hobbies anymore. They're high demand careers that are exploding right now, with drone technology transforming industries from agriculture to public safety, real estate, various land and structural inspections. Skilled operators of drones have never been more in demand. At Sonoran Desert Institute, an accredited online college, real-world training ships right to your door. Their certificate in uncrewed technology, aerial systems is just one 20-week semester, or you can build on this and use it to start a full 4-year degree in drone operations. You get hands-on with small drones, simulators, sensors, flight planning, FAA regulations, and safety. You can build custom drones, master thermography, GIS project management, graduate ready for technical or leadership roles as a confident drone operator or flight manager. SDI really shows us that firearms and drones can be more than just a hobby. Learn the skills that matter today. Visit sdi.edu/max-afterburner or call the number in the description below. Because as you can see, drones have become way more relevant just in these last few years than they ever have before. And then Russia, don't sleep on Russia. Russia is the guy that she told you not to worry about. And Russia has sent in a corvette of their own. And I'm going to take my best crack at this. The Staraguchi Stukoi, and that is from the ballistic fleet. It's a stealthy multi-role platform that is said to pack the KH-35 Uran anti-ship missile with a 160 nautical mile range. Also 3 M54 caliber cruise missiles that are said to be able to strike land or sea targets 1,500 miles away. Plus a Ka-27 anti-submarine helicopter is likely operating in the area as well, and that's armed with torpedoes and depth charges. There's also a Russian helicopter carrier that's docked in Iranian waters, likely an Ivan Grin class or similar, capable of launching up to 13 helicopters for troop insertion, recon, and sub-hunting. With AK-630 Sea-Wiz, that's that close-in weapon system for you acronym lovers, and the Igla man-pads. China is also contributing to this with advanced surface combatants, probably Type 052DL destroyers or Type 054A frigates with long-range missiles and powerful radar suites. Russian officials are calling the drills, and I quote, highly relevant. Weird that they're calling these highly relevant right now while Iran is in these intense negotiations with the United States. Iranian leaders stress that strengthening security cooperation is incredibly important. Obviously, at this point, they're trying to get all the help they can get. This trio is building real interoperability fast, and this is a menage a trois that doesn't sound like a lot of fun to me. However, it's pretty unlikely that Russia and China would do any type of kinetic action against the United States, risking the fallout from what could happen from that. Instead, this is likely more of a deterrence move where Russia and China will be heavily embedded into these exercises, and then they'll likely pull most of their forces out of the region should any type of war go down. While Geneva talks are limping along, this show of force does give Iran stronger deterrence, and it buys time. The biggest thing is this is buying time for them to do whatever it is they're doing with that new layer of concrete over the sensitive sites. Maybe their nuclear program is being regenerated. Maybe it's just more ballistic missiles. But this does raise the odds of some sort of an accidental clash that could turn ugly very quickly. However, the United States is going to respond, and Uncle Sam is going to respond in a very decisive way with some serious muscle. So the U.S. has the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group that's already on station in the Arabian Sea, with potential reinforcements from additional Ford or Nimitz class carriers, with word that the Ford class has arrived in the region today. forming what President Trump has called a massive armada to back up the diplomatic pressure. The Pentagon continues planning. Likely every single day, new plans are being made, new targets are being added for an extended strike campaign if these negotiations collapse, drawing on assets like the B-2 bombers, submarines, and long-range precision munitions. Allies in the region include the UK, Saudi Arabia, and UAE that could provide basing rights, intelligence sharing, and a regional presence. Day-to-day countermeasures include constant P-8 Poseidon patrols, but specifically the MQ-4C Triton drone is adding a ton of surveillance capability to the area, pumping back information to higher headquarters, right direct to the NSA, likely the National Security Agency, getting information from those MQ-4C Tritons on what's going on with the massive military buildup of Iran, China, and Russia in the region. And then cyber operations are likely monitoring Iranian networks, and Titan sanctions are targeting Iran's oil revenue, specifically their oil revenue with selling oil to China. The strategy here is clear: maintain overwhelming deterrence while avoiding any actions right now that could be seen as a provocation. And the key platforms driving the deterrence off the USS Ford are going to be the FA-18 Super Hornet, the E and the F model. The F model is a two-seater. The E is a one-seat air superiority beast. And then there's the EA-18G Growler that can jam your face off. Basically, melt the enemy's face off should be the technical mission of the EA-18G Growler, pumping tons of electronic warfare waves into whatever SAM systems might be lighting up trying to target air assets. And then all of these assets are going to be protected by the Aegis destroyers with SM-6s and SM-3 missiles that are anti-ship and are also anti-ballistic missile threats. But on the Russian axis side, remember, Russia's Sukhoi corvette has stealth capability, electronic warfare, and those hard-to-intercept, low-flying Kalibir cruise missiles. But again, likely the US wouldn't go head-to-head with Russia, and hopefully nothing goes down while these naval exercises are happening. And then China's destroyers are likely going to provide some sort of area defense. I would guess that those destroyers would have HQ-9 systems, long-range anti-ship missiles, YJ-18s, and the combination of high-end Russian-Chinese tech with Iran's quantity definitely would make this a tough situation should things go down while Russia and China are actually in the region. But diving into the 4D chess section, and it's just so fun to say 4D chess. It just makes me feel really important. But at this point, the US playbook would likely rely very heavily on standoff and air superiority, using electronic attack to disrupt communication links between Russia, China, and Iran, submarines for stealthy preemptive strikes on high-value ships, and over-the-horizon weapons like the long-range anti-ship missile or the LRASM. I'm your daily dealer of acronyms. Don't worry, I got you. Tomahawk missiles can also be launched from 500 plus miles out. F-35s could be there to penetrate any of the ISR that Russia, China, and Iran are trying to send up. Those F-35s could stealthily strike down any of their drones or any of the helicopters should Russia get a little bit handsy. Russia, no means no, okay? And quit trying to feed us shots of vodka so you can take advantage of us. But against those Iranian drone swarms now teamed up with Russian and Chinese drone swarms, massive amounts of drones, the shipboard systems to counter those would be the close-in weapon systems, helicopter gunships, EA-18Gs jamming them, and if fielded, we don't know if they're in the region yet, directed energy weapons. Directed energy weapons involve broader tactics that can strike down massive swaths of a drone swarm, even target ships, helicopters, and basically burn holes through the propulsion system on these different crafts. So let's jump to a hypothetical scenario situation. So let's say the US has MQ-9 Reapers that are up above, Iranian fast boats are spotted making their way from the coast, a Russian corvette launches as well, and then helicopters launch off of those Russian helicopter ships. So now you've got a swarm coming at you. You've got the helicopters, you've got the boats. So likely the best strategy here for the US is to go ahead and launch weapons against these boats and likely show Russia, if you don't turn these helicopters around, they're going to be next. So what would likely be launched against them would be EA-18G Growlers and F-18s going up, strafing the boats. And as soon as those helicopters realized there was a 12 ship of F-18s up above, pretty much all the smart helicopters in the group would turn around. But let's say a couple of them don't turn around. At that point, the EA-18Gs would be pumping information to strikers and to the air superiority F-18E Hornets. The F-18E Hornets would target in, launch AMRAAMs at the two helicopters that didn't turn around, and those would be shredded, turning into shredded metal, falling harmlessly into the ocean, and it would be a bad day. And then at that point, escalation would hit level 11 because now Russia and the US have entered the fight against each other instead of just a proxy war against the US, with Russia supplying information, supplying hardware, even supplying special forces operators to Iran. That's something that we could see, and in my opinion, Russia and China are going to want to keep it more at the proxy level while just supporting Iran and letting Iran actually be the ones at the tip of the spear, so that should something go kinetic like this, it's not seen as a force on force with China and Russia up against the United States. So there you go, guys. Russia and China joining Iran for the serious escalation in the Straits of Hormuz live fire drills. This is a challenge to US dominance and power in the Middle East. This potentially strengthens Iran's hand and complicates any US military options and turns the Straits into an even higher stakes flashpoint, while these nuclear diplomacy talks basically limp forward. And I think limp is kind of the name of the game so far with these talks. Again, negotiating with a regime that's killed 30,000 of their own people and will likely do it again if action isn't taken. What do you think happens with Russia and China teaming up with Iran? Do you think this is a temporary thing, or will they stay in the region longer? Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you guys want to see a live from me every week, go ahead and join the Max Ready Room. I'll put a link in the description for that. And then go ahead and follow me on X and Instagram. I'm posting there pretty much every day. And then watch one of these videos that pop up right here. I'll see you on this next video. This is Ryan, also known as Max Afterburner, signing off.